Okay. How's it going? I haven't done a video where I'm reading for a while, obviously, so I came across a book here. I just wanted to share this. Of course, I don't know if you guys heard of that, but it's The Game Changers, Social Alchemists in the 21st Century, Teresa Bullard, PhD, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. She says here that she's a pioneer in the field of fusing science, consciousness, and transformative technologies. She is the founder of Quantum Leap Alchemy, co-founder of the Universal Kabbalah Network, and a senior teacher for the Modern Mystery School. Teresa obtained her PhD in physics from the University of Washington, where she conducted interdisciplinary research in quantum theory, neutrino physics, crystal chemistry, nanotechnology, and origin of life studies. As one of a new generation of interdisciplinary scientists, her inspiration to pursue scientific research and explore ancient wisdom teachings such as consciousness expansion, unseen energies, holistic medicine, and alchemy is founded upon a deep yearning to understand the universe and its many facets. So, I obviously won't read everything here, but she's got a website here, quantumleapalchemy.com. So she's been a featured speaker at conferences and meetings, International Society for the Study of Subtle Energy and Energy Medicine, the Monroe Institute, Professional Division, the Modern Mystery School, International Alchemy, and Body, Mind, Spirit Expos. So, this came out in 2012, all rights reserved. So I'll start off with the first page here and I'll read on. Are you feeling saturated with the huge influx of information and activities vying for your time and attention lately? Are you finding that you're just barely keeping up? Are you having to make tough choices about where to focus your time and energy? Many have called this time a quickening, where the speed with which we must think, respond, and take action is accelerating. Systems are breaking down, people are rising up, and there is uncertainty of what tomorrow will bring. Major events are happening around the world in rapid sequence, including record-breaking natural disasters, the likes of which we have not seen before. All these are signs. What are they signs of? Some believe these are signs of labor, that we are giving birth to a new world, and that transformative changes are taking place. This book aims to put such current events into a possible context within the evolutionary process that humanity is going through. It discusses emerging new paradigms, world events, future trends, and ancient wisdom that help reveal a bigger picture of what is happening. Combining my background in physics and personal interests in consciousness studies, I have long sought a way to find a link between science, spirit, and consciousness. I have often asked questions such as, are there practical solutions for bringing these different worlds of science and consciousness together? Can we really use consciousness to harness the quantum field in practical ways? How can we more actively step into the role of transforming our world to make it a better place? As I have searched over the years to find the missing links to bridging these worlds and becoming a more conscious agent of change, I have come to a new appreciation of an ancient tradition that holds some of the keys to what the transformational process involves. In ancient times, the transformations that we've been through and are going through now would have been recognized as an alchemical process. That alchemical process is one of purifying and transforming us in a way that's meant to lift us up to a higher and more integral state of existence. My hope is to offer insights and solutions to empower you, the reader, to become a more conscious participant in these exciting times of change that we are now in. It is my sincere hope that you will find that information herein useful, inspiring, and relevant to your life. As each of us dare to take an active role in transforming our lives and our world, educate ourselves in the ways of change, and empower others to do the same, then we can become the game changers that we have been waiting for. Chapter 1. Entering the Age of Conscious Evolution. These are remarkable times. Just about everywhere we look right now change is afoot. What is all this change about? Why now? And how do we best adapt? These are some of the questions that will be explored in this book. We are witnessing the old systems and limiting structures of the previous millennia's outdated paradigms crumbling down around us. As the old systems break down, people are being stripped of their comfort zones and are rising up in despair and anger. From the heads of governments, to the people in the workplace, to the children playing on the street, to our own family matters, there is great uncertainty of what tomorrow will bring. Amidst this seeming chaos, though, there is a light of hope emerging. As the saying goes, quote, great chaos precedes great growth. Reminds me of the motto of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Ordo ab Chao, or order out of chaos. Or what Rahm Emanuel said, that never let a good crisis go to waste. It sounds like, very similar. Meaning that chaos, there's opportunity. The system failure is given way to a new time of reassessing of what is truly of essence that we must salvage, what is corrupting the system and must be discarded, and what kinds of new innovations, methods, and sustainable solutions, there's that word sustainable, do we want to replace these with. The changes taking place are happening both behind the scenes and in the world at large. They are signposts on an evolutionary road indicating that we are passing out of one era and into a new one. Humanity is evolving. Since the turn of the new millennium, it seems like each year that passes, time is speeding up. Things are happening quicker. People are having to deal with far more than ever before. Life and the speed with which we must think, respond, and take action are accelerating beyond what we ever imagined. We are further experiencing more record-breaking world events each year, to such a degree that even the most devoted skeptics are reaching for plausible explanations. All of this is driving us to change. Sometimes those changes are coming by force, and other times by choice. Some people may view these changes with fear and uncertainty, thinking all systems are breaking down right now and unsure of where to look for the reasons and how to cope. But for others, it is a time to be celebrated, a time of opportunity as the doors to new possibilities are opening up. This time has been referred to by mystics as a quickening, a great shift, a transformation, a time of transition, or the end of the world we once knew, and the birthing of a new world, or aka the New World Order. Humanity is in labor. As with any birthing process, there are pains that come with it. This book is dedicated to times such as these, times of great transformation. It can be seen as a companion guide on how to navigate the tumultuous tides of change. Its ultimate aim is to empower you to become the captain of your ship and a conscious participant with the power to influence the evolutionary process we are in. With this knowledge, you will be more equipped to harness the opportunities that such times present you with. Many authorities agree that this concept of conscious evolution is an important theme of our times. Evolution often comes in the face of crisis, where there is a huge pressure that puts us at risk of extinction unless we get really innovative and evolve. Let's face it, there have been a lot of crises happening in the world since the turn of the new millennium. Some people are reacting to this with survival-based instinct and trying to cling to control, while others are doing away with old methods and responding instead to great innovations. These truly are unprecedented times. At a 2011 university graduation lecture given by Barbara Marx Hubbard, an idea was presented that each successful evolutionary shift can be identified as a, quote, consciousness-raising experience, unquote. This view that evolution results in a gradual or sometimes rapid, raising of consciousness is quite interesting. Certainly we can look back on the various evolutionary stages and see that indeed evolution has led to ever more complex and self-aware beings. Our consciousness, self-awareness, complexity, and multidimensionality of thought have continued to increase and evolve as times goes by, and as we and our technologies evolve. And she has an image here, down here. Read that. I don't know. Yeah, right. So she's all into the transhumanist agenda, and she claims that all this is an alchemical transformation. So, some more evidence of the secret society's involvement with the changes that are taking place around us, obviously. Barbara Marx Hubbard, this is page 11 by the way, further claimed that humanity is now poised to make an evolutionary leap that is, quote, as great as that made from the Neanderthal to the self-aware human, unquote. Not only are we about to make another big leap, we are also now aware that we are evolving and that we have the power to affect our own evolution. This awareness and the ability to collaborate with our own evolution presents us with an amazing opportunity, the chance to launch into an age of conscious evolution. More people than ever are now actively joining the effort to consciously evolve both in their personal lives as well as in our society as a whole. The push now is towards a new level of harmony. We are entering an era that seeks connection rather than separation. And I have to pause for a second because some people may not. I'm not trying to whoever's watching as, play as idiots or anything like that, but I've read enough of like globalist books and listened to some globalist speeches, and so whenever you're hearing that, in case you're not aware, when they're saying we are entering an era that seeks connection rather than separation, they're meaning it's another word for globalism. Everybody's becoming connected, interconnected into a global society. And what she means by separation is people being their own individual, isolated nation states or isolated individual groups. Because we are entering where we're going is a one-world socialist, collectivist global society, and that's some more globalist language. Anyways. We are entering an era that seeks connection rather than separation, that's looking for synergy instead of discord. It is time to bring the pieces together into a greater whole, rather than continuing to break things into separate parts. So again, more collectivist language here. As we shift into this age of conscious evolution, the transition we are making is from an age of separation into one of integration. Again, she's using one world order, globalist language. That most people, if they're not as keen aware of this New World Order agenda, will read this and, I don't know, sometimes it might just go over their head if they're not reading it carefully enough. But I'm sure people watching and listening know. I don't have to explain, but to successfully make such a shift, we must go through an alchemical process of purifying and raising our existence to a new, higher level of being. If we wish to affect change in our world in a sustainable way, again, sustainable, like, sustainable development, and, you hear this a lot in the Agenda 21, and we must come from a foundation of knowledge and understanding of the deeper principles behind the change process. How do we successfully change and transform our system? This is where alchemy comes in. Chapter 2, Evolutionary Alchemy. The idea of conscious evolution is not really new, as it has been around for thousands of years. Evidence of this can be traced back to antiquity, as the concept of intentionally participating in our own evolution is the primary subject central to the ancient tradition of alchemy. Real alchemy is all about consciously and intentionally speeding up evolution. It is the art and science of how to do this. So now we're getting a little glimpse, a little bit of an understanding of what this alchemy and alchemical transformation of society is all about. Using crisis as a catalyst to bring in the New World Order. That's what we're getting so far, as far as I'm reading. Repeat that again. Page 13. Real alchemy is all about consciously and intentionally speeding up evolution. It's the art and science of how to do this. By understanding how the themes and opportunities of modern day relate to the ancient art of alchemy, we can learn to become a game changer and contribute to the evolution of humanity. So let us look deeper into what alchemy really is. Alchemy is the epitome of integrating science, spirit, and consciousness together. It is defined as the art and science of transformation and transmutation, of changing something into something even better. Many people still think of alchemy as some archaic fringe science focused solely on the pursuit of turning lead into gold, that only charlatans purported as valid. However, when you look into the real history of alchemy, you find that this old stereotype is a myth. And she quotes from Paracelsus here, quote, "Alchemy is the art that separates what is useful from what is not, by transforming it into its ultimate matter and essence," unquote. Historically, some of the most innovative scientists who brought many of the greatest inventions and discoveries to humankind were alchemists. Scientific giants such as Isaac Newton, Roger Bacon, Francis Bacon, Leonardo da Vinci, Robert Boyle, Paracelsus, Tycho Brahe. I'll spell his name for you. Tycho Brahe. It's spelled Tycho. His last name spelled Brahe. Nikola Tesla, Wolfgang Pauli, all studied and were inspired by alchemy. For a clear and thorough introduction to the tradition and history of alchemy, I recommend the contemporary books by Dennis William Hawke, such as The Complete Idiot's Guide to Alchemy and The Emerald Tablet. Alchemists developed the art and science of intentionally speeding up evolution. She says again under this, right here. So, modern sciences such as physics, chemistry, astronomy, biology, allopathic medicine, pharmacology, psychology, as well as Oriental medicine and other holistic health remedies developed out of the ancient traditions of alchemy. However, where modern sciences have taken a purely materialistic and reductionist approach, alchemy is intimately connected with the philosophies and practices of Hermeticism, mythology, and spirituality. Because of this, alchemy not only holds the secrets to understanding and harnessing the process of transformation at many different levels, but it also is the key to bridging the fields of science, spirit, and consciousness once again. Part of why alchemy became so misunderstood is that symbolism and metaphor have been used to communicate the teachings of alchemy in a language of images and symbols, rather than a language of words. As you drive around town, you can see such symbols still used today, even though people typically don't understand what they are really about anymore. One of the most prominent alchemical symbols that we still see frequently is the caduceus, used by today's medical industry. The caduceus is the staff with wings, knob on top, and either one or two serpents intertwining with it. The former, one serpent, is the staff of Asclepius, while the latter, two serpents, is the staff of Hermes. Both versions of the caduceus are important symbols in alchemy, but they have slightly different mythology and meaning behind them. Today's medical industry, however, seems to have forgotten the roots of this symbol and what it means. We have alchemical symbolism all around us today still. It is there waiting to reveal its secrets again for the people who are ready to start looking and remembering that there is deeper meaning behind all these symbols. These symbols that are still in use today point to a time when science emerged from alchemy. The establishment of science as we know it today is a relatively young field of investigation compared to the thousands of years of study and development that backs up the tradition of alchemy. Throughout its long history, alchemy has held the secrets to a universal formula that allows us to intentionally speed up the evolutionary process and to drive things towards perfection. there's another clue there. Obviously, maybe some listeners and watchers of this channel are obviously, since I've done a few videos, I know a little bit on the negative side on Bill Cooper, but I think Bill Cooper got a lot of the mystery schools and what they believed correct. I mean, and he said that, of course, he found through his research that alchemy was all about, what they mean by driving everything towards perfection is, turning lead into gold, turning man into a god through the use of science. By the invention of technology, someday we'll merge with machines and live forever. It's what the transhumanist movement is all about. So now we get a clue from a source from the horse's mouth that what their occult sciences is really all about. So far, we're already getting that. So, okay, continuing. When it comes to this alchemical change process, the most important ingredient that differentiates it from simple change is that alchemical change is driven by consciousness and informed intention and knowledge. With the discoveries of quantum physics and other newly emerging sciences, scientists today are finally starting to acknowledge, once again, that consciousness plays an important role in our experience of reality. Alchemists never lost touch with this fact. Instead of dying out hundreds of years ago, like many presume, the field of alchemy has continued to live on and develop its art, waiting for the day when the world will be ready for its wisdom and power again. That time is now. The 7 steps of transformation. Through the study of nature, alchemists learn that the evolutionary process of transformation is broken down into 7 stages. This process is a natural one that we go through all the time, and you may recognize these stages in your own life, organization, or in society as a whole. However, when left to nature alone, it usually takes a long time for things to naturally evolve. By focusing on ways to harness consciousness and understanding the natural process of evolution, alchemists learn to intentionally work with nature and speed up the evolutionary process. Through intention and skillful interaction with evolution, alchemy can lead to some amazing results that by ordinary standards might be considered miracles. The key to skillfully interacting with evolution, to speed it up, is to understand the underlying principles of these 7 stages and how to harness this process. Briefly, these 7 stages of alchemy, and I listen carefully with this because this gets really interesting here, are: number 1, calcination. This first stage is about breaking things down and burning them to ash. This is where we take our first step at eliminating whatever dense impurities or problems that are plaguing a system. This is accomplished by burning or breaking down the whole object. At a personal level, this is when our ego gets burned or we experience an intense or traumatic event that shakes our foundation. It is a rather searing, caustic approach, but that it is the fastest way to get rid of the impurities. The whole system is bound up with and polluted by those impurities, so the whole system must get thrown into the fire to set the essential parts free from the parts that weigh it down. And I'm done with the first step, and I just wanted to kind of add what I'm thinking about when I'm reading this here. Well, it talks about breaking things down and burning them to ash. And that is kind of making me think of when this whole pandemic, I call it that, happened. And all the chaos that happened in 2020. I think that's really been one. We can clearly see that as them doing their alchemical, you can see it as one of their alchemical, experiments, whatever, of breaking things down. I think one of the things that the lockdowns and the, face masks have done is program indoctrinate socially engineered people, helped anyways with that process of socially engineering people to, be more a part of the collective whole, and not, and being totally against individual liberty, individuality. I see that a lot at places where I've been, where I've had to wear a mask, and I've heard people, if you can call them people, sheeple, talk about their reasons why they support these lockdowns and the stripping away of our these simple freedoms that we used to enjoy, such as being able to wear your face out in public. They when they talk like as if, well, this is for the good of the whole, and I've heard that a couple times. So your individual God-given liberties as a human being have to be put aside for the sake of the the greater whole, the collective. So when I'm reading this, and it mentions that part of this breaking things down and eliminating problems that are plaguing a system. I'm thinking, since she sounds like one of those collectivists, so far she sounds like it anyways, right? Plaguing a system, and I think that what she means by impurities that are plaguing the system, breaking down, or esoteric language, whatever, that could mean, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the God-given liberties that we were supposed to have with this system that they see as poison, obviously. So, and the traumatic event that shakes their foundation, that's been all of 2020 with the masses. And I use that word, the masses. I know the enemies use that, but from people's attitudes lately, with who I've been around at work and everything, I think they've kind of earned that title. They're really not thinking for themselves. I don't want to say too much because I don't want my video taken down for thinking too much out loud. But that's what I think when I read this. So that's the purpose why I got this out. I'm reading this and I'm seeing this is another secret society book where it is full of just admissions and that they're the ones behind the change, Okay, so I did step number 1, calcination, breaking things down, reading the dash, and she talks about the second stage, dissolution. The second step is a stirring of the pot, so to speak. During a physical process, you put the remains of the calcination in water and let the ashes dissolve into a homogeneous mixture. At a personal level, dissolution can bring up a swirl of emotions, or the reactionary disillusionment that comes after our ego gets burned. Typically in this stage, there is a lack of clarity, and we are not sure what is actually going on, or what the right approach is to deal with it, so we are left to our gut reactions. This connects us with the deeper stirrings of the subconscious. And since I've spent a lot of time with the first step talking about, telling you my opinions of what I interpret what she's talking about, anyways, I'll let you listen to what I just was reading there and let you decide, because I think it's should become pretty clear to those who have ears to hear. So that's step number 2, dissolution. Step number 3, separation. In this third stage, you let the solution sit undisturbed for a bit, and things will naturally start to separate out because they have different densities. Once the layers or various elements become separated and more clearly identifiable, you start picking out the pieces of what to keep and what to discard, what is pure or essential, what is impure or toxic. After the various parts that are essential to keep have been separated out, they must each go through their own purification process to bring them into a greater state of clarity and balance before they can successfully be brought back together. 4. This is step 4, conjunction. This is the halfway point where you bring the purified parts back together in harmonious proportion and reunite them. At this stage, we find a working combination between the essential ingredients, and in bringing them back together, A new vision and sense of clarity for how to proceed is established. Continuing onward from here requires a strong sense of connection and dedication to accomplishment of the new vision. And I'm going to say real quick that I'm at 30 minutes already. Before, when for some reason my phones that I would use, it was a storage issue I was having. I haven't figured it out all the way, but the past two phones, this is a new phone that I got, cut me off at around 35 minutes. And it might do it with this one. I don't know, but if it does that in the next 5 minutes or so, I'll make a second video, finish this up, but so y'all know what happened if it cuts me off while I'm reading. Okay, so we did 4, conjunction. Step number 5, fermentation. The 5th stage brings another operation of separating and burning, but it is at a much more subtle level. Here you let something mature in a warm, slow process that continues to eliminate any final impurities or subtle imbalances. Fermenting means to allow something to mature to the point where anything that is corruptible or transitory will rot away. It is driven by more of an internal fire, flamed by a higher vision of perfection. Any impurities that make it to this stage are not as obvious and take more soul-searching to root out. Simultaneously, the new unified whole, with its new vision, is maturing and taking deeper root to replace the old parts that are dying away. 6. Distillation. From the 6th stage on, everything that remains is of essence and must be kept. So the task now switches from one of purification to one of refinement and elevation. Here you go through several cycles of evaporating and recondensing. During this stage, you are elevating the vibration, raising its energy into a more refined state, and then letting it come back down into a denser state. You go through several rounds of this refining process, and with each round of elevating to a higher level, you capture more of the subtle energies within it. Then you let it recondense into a more tangible state. The 7th and last stage she calls coagulation. This final stage is a crystallization where everything congeals into a final perfected form. Typically you have to go through several rounds of the previous 6 steps before you will actually reach your end goal, your Philosopher's Stone. The 7th step process is universal and can therefore be applied in so many different ways. For example, it can be applied to your personal life and how you have grown mentally, emotionally, and spiritually through various life experiences. It can be applied at a practical level in a laboratory setting to create medicine from plants and herbs, the basis of both modern pharmacology and age-old herbal remedies. It can even be applied to the societal changes that we're going through right now. So, and therefore, alchemy is really just the art of social engineering, order out of chaos. Now we know and understand why all these things are happening, why they happened last year in 2020, why they continue to go on now. It is their alchemical transmutation of society and humanity collectively into the one world socialist government. Alchemy has, in fact, been used to conduct experiments in social alchemy. This is page 21, by the way. Significant shifts in social tenure, such as those seen during the Golden Age, the Renaissance, and other times of great social transformation, were often the result of applying alchemical principles to the social standards of the day. For example, the Medicis, who were the fathers of the Renaissance, were scholars of alchemy and the ancient classics that influenced the development of alchemical thought. Perhaps alchemy is re-emerging today for just such an occasion. As we enter into this age of conscious evolution, we are entering into a time where we must step forward as a new breed of social alchemists in the 21st century. Chapter 3, a study of metamorphosis. Another metaphor that has been used to describe this process of alchemical change we are going through is the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. In metamorphosis, the old form of the caterpillar completely breaks down in the cocoon before the butterfly emerges as an entirely new form and takes flight. She has this thing right here about the butterflies. Let you read that. Evolutionary alchemy is akin to the process of metamorphosis. The metamorphosis story has been masterfully explained in Bruce Lipton's and Steve Bowerman's book, Spontaneous Evolution, as well as in Nori Huddle's 1990 publication titled Butterfly. Here below, I would like to use the same metaphor to also point out how the 7 stages of alchemy govern this process. A caterpillar is likened to the old bureaucratic system birthed by the Industrial Revolution that still dominates much of our way of perceiving and operating. It lives most of its life consuming and growing fat upon the land. Once it has reached a point of maturity, some internal clock goes off saying, "It's time for change," and suddenly the caterpillar's functions begin to slow down and struggle to carry on as usual. The caterpillar then goes in search of a nice little spot to rest underneath a leaf, and it builds itself a cocoon. In this cocoon or chrysalis stage, an alchemical process takes place. The length of time for the metamorphosis cycle is dependent on the amount of light and heat present. Most butterflies go through this process anywhere from a couple weeks up to 7 months. It begins with the old structure of the caterpillar breaking down and going through a form of death. This breaking down is the calcination stage of alchemy. As the old caterpillar cells break off from the original structure, they dissolve into a soupy mess, entering the dissolution stage. This is the stage we are in as a human society in our current cycle of societal evolution. With all the old paradigm systems, from financial systems to government systems to education systems to various other old structures that our society has been built upon, dissolving. They are starting to crumble and lose their foothold as unique identities. Consider individual people as being like the cells of the caterpillar. No one wants to see our world fall apart, but there are different camps on how to make the failing system work. There are those who think that the old structure worked just fine, providing safety, security, control, and comfort. These individuals tend to cling to the old structure and fight for its survival. Folks, it's you and watching and listening and me. People that don't want the New World Order. There are others who have always felt the system is flawed and there's a better way. These are the innovators and rebels who actively work for change. Some take a productive approach, others a destructive approach. Then there are those who fall somewhere in the middle and tend to go with the status quo. Usually the comfort zone wins out because change often requires a lot of energy, discipline, and effort. But when the comfort zone gets ripped away and things stop feeling so safe and secure, the system becomes agitated. As this breakdown happens in the caterpillar, the old cells begin to behave as if they are dying and that the whole system is out of control. This puts them into survival mode. Fortunately, as the old cells and structure break down and expire, there simultaneously appear new types of cells called imaginal cells. Seemingly out of nowhere, these imaginal cells start to pop up and increase in numbers. Being different from the old caterpillar cells, the imaginal cells are first perceived as a foreign enemy or threat to the system. Behaving as if these new cells are viruses coming into the system and causing the breakdown, the old caterpillar cells begin to attack the imaginal cells and try to kill them off. So, I'll let you, use your own mind and to, guess what these imaginal cells are. These new imaginal cells hold a new pattern of DNA expression. Despite the attacks from the old cells, these new cells continue coming onto the scene because the DNA of the transforming caterpillar is putting out the instruction to create them. They are part of the plan. As they continue to be created and their numbers increase, they soon find each other and gathering together gain strength in numbers. Through that strength, they become more able to withstand the attacks from the old system. she's got an image here. As imaginal cells unite within the alchemical soup, they gain strength in numbers. So let you look at that real quick. Yep. So, well, I'm at 40 minutes, still doing good. So, at some point, the imaginal cells reach a certain critical mass and grouping together. They then start to realize, quote, I don't have to be and do everything on my own anymore. We are part of a group now. So we can share duties and distribute tasks among us. So they start to build a new form of order, a new structure. Once the critical mass is achieved, the development gains momentum, and it starts to take on a life of its own. This new structure is guided by the clear and definite vision that is held within, a blueprint for the butterfly that the caterpillar is ultimately destined to become. This separating of the old from the new and of the various essential components, as well as coming to a clear vision of where to go from here, is the separation stage of alchemy. It is like separating the wheat from the chaff. They're separating the wheat from the chaff. Well, I'm going to continue to be, according to them, on the chaff side, because I will not accept their New World Order. Moving onward, as the imaginal cells gain strength by uniting around a new common vision and pattern, the old caterpillar cells that were clinging to the old crumbling system begin to notice that something over in the imaginal cell camp is working. They realize, quote, maybe if I repurpose myself, I can also join in on what's working, and I can survive that way, unquote. Thus, many old cells begin to repurpose themselves and learn to unite with and add to the cause of the imaginal cells. They bring with them a certain functionality, an experience that can be a valuable contribution to the growth and development of the new system. For example, a digestive cell can still function as a digestive cell. An immunity cell can still function as an immunity cell. They just need to reorient to the new system. By doing so, they free up the imaginal cells to specialize in new elements that did not exist in the caterpillar, such as wings, diverse colors, antennae, etc. This harmonization and union of what we want were once opposing elements is what alchemists called the fourth stage of conjunction. Conjunction comes once we figure out all the essential parts to keep and then put them back together into one whole. This becomes an integrated system where the various parts can now effectively and harmoniously collaborate. So, the world where we once, at least, like to know, the system of individuality, individual rights, the person is the individual private property, and all that stuff that represents the old world order, breaks down, becomes, the one world collectivist socialist government. So far so good. We will return to the story of metamorphosis in a moment, but as a brief aside, let's look at how this stage of conjunction might look at a personal or organizational level. Conjunction brings us to a renewed sense of self and functionality that more closely matches our ideal vision. We have greater confidence and knowledge of who we are. We feel put back together again and can now move forward. The conjunction stage always feels really good because here things start working and moving forward again. The challenge that people and organizations tend to face here is one of getting too comfortable with finding a sweet spot. For example, a company's leadership might get to a place where they think, okay, we've been through a downsizing, we've regrouped. Now we're moving again in a place where things feel good. Our people are producing and meeting the new objectives, so now we can take some of the pressure off. The sigh of relief. The problem with this is that the people and company as a whole generally goes straight back into a comfort zone, stops the progression, and falls short of attaining its full potential glory. There are 3 more stages to go. The final 3 stages take a lot more discipline, intention, and proactive stepping up to become conscious change agents working to perfect things. Say what you might about his personality. Apple's CEO Steve Jobs was a great example of an alchemist of innovation and cultural change. Jobs looked beyond the bottom line approach of driving for highest return on investment from the least amount of effort. Instead, he constantly sought to push the envelope of creating great products and redefining the digital technology-based consumer market. Jobs almost single-handedly kicked off a revolution in our modern way of life by reaching way outside the box and bringing new paradigm ideas into practical, easy-to-use products. He never allowed his teams to get too comfortable or stuck in a rut with one-track thinking. To Steve Jobs, only excellence would do. Everything else, quote, is shit, unquote. It must be purified and refined further. Mediocrity is the enemy of truly transformative innovation. While he may have been a bit crazy to some, Steve Jobs left a legacy that launched many of us into a whole new way of life and made Apple the most profitable corporation in the world by 2011. And what's the symbol of Apple, right? It's the apple with the that's bitten off, with the part that's bitten off. You know what that symbolizes. The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, talked about in Genesis. It's a satanic symbol, and we know that's the goal. Ultimate goal of these guys is to deify, perfect the world, and them become this ascended super being, or gods, through the Luciferian knowledge. Anyways, his example is one to be studied when it comes to applying alchemical methods into the business world. I recommend the official Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson to get a sense of the underlying principles that drove his genius. Steve Jobs' continuous effort to keep the pressure on, catalyze change, reach beyond the ordinary to become extraordinary, strive towards perfection, maintain high ideals and personal spiritual values, and not only make innovative technologies but creating masterpieces of art are at the core of his success. This is the stuff that 21st century alchemists of social change are made of. In a similar fashion to how Steve Jobs operated, we must each push through the final 3 stages with more effort, higher vision, and constant pressure, continuing to stay present and intentional with the process. The first 4 stages are fairly typical of life and normal operations. Most standard change processes today can get you to the 4th stage of the transformational process, but they fail to produce truly sustainable results and lasting change because they stop there. The last 3 stages take more courage and warrior spirit to continue onward. Thus, for these final stages, I will spend a bit more time describing their processes. Returning to the metaphor of the butterfly, those old cells that fail to repurpose and align with the new structure continue to dissolve in the alchemical soup and eventually die off. Did you hear that? If you do not conform to this new age, new world order that's pretty much practically just about here now, we as the in the this metaphor of talking about the cells of the butterfly, the old cells, if we don't align with this new world order, we will, like the cells, eventually die off. It's amazing that you can find this in their own books. She writes it to in such a fashion that, well, you don't really hear her say that, yeah, we're behind the chaos, we're causing the riots, we're doing this, we're doing that. She writes it to where just common sense, you read this, and it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that she is saying, as well as many other initiates of these secret societies in their own books, they're pretty much saying that this new age plan is their work, they're behind it, and those who do not conform to this, they write in a way to get away with it language, that anything that doesn't conform to their new age will basically die, will basically not be a part of it, will basically be isolated. It's another wording I heard from another, I think Manly P. Hall had said that. Anyways, continuing on page 30. The alchemical soup then provides the sustenance and raw material needed by the newly emerging system to continue its development until it reaches a stage of maturation. This is the fermentation stage of alchemy. To ferment something means to allow it to mature to the point where anything that is corruptible or transitory rots away. This is done by applying a gentle heat that is flamed by the eternal fires of passion and devotion to a higher ideal or vision. Fermentation is both a maturing of the new form and a final death of the old. Anything that is not of the purest essence or is still corruptible must go. This includes the last remnants of the old structure, with its impurities and limitations. So that is your Constitution of individual rights and God-given freedoms. That is the old religions that don't conform to the new age, don't become more liberal in their doctrines and tenets and whatnot. So that's what she's saying here. As you can imagine, this stage takes a lot more effort to root out those final, subtler impurities and corruptible elements. It takes discipline, patience, and dedication. It is tempting at this stage to just overlook or ignore the more subtle impurities and try to push forward without dealing with such nuances. But to do so would stop the process short of truly attaining its ultimate potential. This stage asks that we really face the darkness of what is not working, focus on the details, and insist that, quote, everything must be purified if it's not working, or else we need to get rid of it, unquote. To just keep at it, even when things seem better, until all that remains is pure, that is the task at the fermentation stage. And I'm going to obviously do a part 2 to this. So, yep. Thought I'd be able to get through a good chunk of this by that time, but I think I'm gonna pause it here. I wanted to. Do I have the book here? I have a pile of books here that I'm trying to see if I have it over here, because I don't want to have to get up and look for it and stuff. But there's this, The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, and he has a chapter devoted to the three Rosicrucian manifestos that came out in the 1600s, the Fama Fraternitatis, the Confessio Fraternitatis, etc. And he had his version of it. It was very worded, very interesting. Is it back here? Sometimes I just put stuff. It's right here, guys. Okay, so I'll finish reading that part 2, but I wanted to read this if I could find it, because this just came to my mind when I read it. That yeah, it's around here. Okay, yeah, this is, according to Manly P. Hall, this is page 458 of his Secret Teachings of All Ages. He's reading from the Confessio Fraternitatis RC and E. Rudidos Europe, or whatever. But on chapter 7, he quotes the Rosicrucians as saying that we shall not be recognized as those responsible for this change. He's talking about the change of the Reformation of Europe during the time. They were the ones behind the liberalization of, you know, that era, and even today you read their stuff, they're more liberal. So, but notice that it clearly says here that we shall not be recognized, that implying that they're the ones that are going to be responsible for this change. But people won't recognize as they're the ones responsible for what's going on, for the changes and everything. For people shall say that it is the result of the progressiveness of the age. You know, and you know, in different wordings, I've heard people say that all the time of what's going on. What's going on is just normal, natural. It's just a part of evolution, or it's just a part of, you know, the modern era. But with this, that we're researching and reading, that you're listening to, we clearly know who's behind all this, various organizations that are bringing about the New Age, the Aquarian New World Socialist Order. Well, thank you for watching and listening. Take it easy. Have a good night. Part 2 coming up.